You ready?
Do what?
You ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah, if we can ever get Ethel to sit down, we'll start. Oh, hi Ethel.
Greetings.
Greetings.
There'll be some truth there.
All right. For now, this will be our last class on the unseen realm. Now, somewhere down the road, health permits, maybe we can go into part 2 because there is just so much material that we need to look at, become aware of. I appreciate all of your comments. I know Dan does, I do. It's a humbling thing to say things and then people come up to you and they let you know they've been thinking and studying and searching themselves. I had that happen 4 different times this morning. And that just encourages me. It really does. It's a humbling thing, brothers and sisters, to be a teacher or a preacher. Not only the words you speak will you be held accountable for, but you have a lot of influence, a lot of impact. And it can go on for generations. And so you have to be very careful. And now we're on the internet, you know, YouTube and what have you. I'm extremely conscious of the things I say and the things I present, because literally that stuff goes around the world. And boy, that's humbling. And so in these series of lessons that Dan and I presented, we wanted to pique your interest. Wanted to focus on some things that, quite candidly, in our brotherhood, we've never really focused on that much. Really, we never have. And it opens up a whole new idea or concept that perhaps we may have missed out on for many, many, many decades in our brotherhood. And that's been one of the most scary things about teaching this material in our brotherhood, is because it's not really been presented that much anywhere else that we're aware of. I mean, it may be, obviously, because I know brothers, I know elders and preachers that are reading material and exchanging ideas and concepts. I mean, Dan's talked to so many people, it's amazing about these ideas, these concepts. But it's just encouraging, and I want you to know that from the bottom of my heart, to see you want to explore, to see you want to grow, to see you be motivated with your own passion to search the Word of God, even though it's something initially is very foreign to you, to me, to anyone. Okay? And so I commend you for that. Now, what I want to do this morning is just a brief review of some of the stuff from last week, and then get into some other material. And if I see that time is getting close, I'm going to go ahead and go through the slides rather rapidly, simply because I want them on the YouTube channel, okay? And then if we have any time after that, Daryl will be more than happy to answer your questions, okay? Got that, Daryl? Oh. All right. Remember last week we talked about the divine law and we spent time with Nimrod? Now I got a text the other day from a dear sweet sister, and she says, do you remember Bugs Bunny calling Elmer Fudd Nimrod? I texted her back. I said very, very vaguely, because I really didn't watch cartoons that much. I was either reading mowing yards to earn money. And it never really crossed my mind. So, no matter what you say, somebody's always got somebody to comment about it, okay? Bless her heart, love her to death for it. All right, and I read you the material out of the Josephus, okay? That from the historian's point of view set the context of his understanding of Nimrod. And Nimrod basically had a grudge, I think, against God, because there had been a flood previously and it destroyed his ancestors. And I think it kind of stuck in his craw. I think Nimrod was probably a very charismatic leader. Not only a great builder of cities and what have you, but I think he was able to bring people together. Now, they had the common language, the common vocabulary, the one lip, and I think he took advantage of that to promote what he wanted to promote, himself primarily. And I started counting, number 1, number 2, then I read Josephus, and then when I went to the next slide, it said 4. What happened to 3? Here's 3. Think about this. Nimrod built Babylon. Nimrod built Nineveh in Assyria. Assyria and Babylon are the two nations that eventually conquered and dismantled the earthly kingdom of God. Think about that. What impact did Nimrod have amongst the people that generations later, as these empires, world empires began to come into existence, that they had such hatred for Israel to the point that they were willing to utterly dismantle and destroy anything that was associated with Yahweh and with that nation. And of course you see there the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes to the north, Israel, 722, Assyria came in, wiped them out. Babylon, southern kingdom of Judah, the 2 tribes down there, 586. I just think it's interesting to kind of see the thread that runs through there, okay? So there is 1, 2, 3. We're in good shape. 4, you read history about Babylon, and they prided themselves in this knowledge that their God or gods were much more, influential, powerful than the God of Israel. And they prided themselves in that reputation that, hey, we've conquered all these nations, and when we conquer a nation, we've conquered their God, and we conquered the tribe to the south, and we've overcome this Yahweh God. That was their mindset. And that's what they felt like they had accomplished. And now they could brag that in Babylon, we are the greatest nation and we have the greatest God or gods of all the nations because we're top dog. Well, eventually, of course, there will be conflict later on. And then we got to Deuteronomy 32 worldview. And I read you this text, Deuteronomy 32, verses 8 and 9. When the Most High, now that's Yahweh, okay? Elyon, Yahweh. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, all right, the Most High, Yahweh, is going to give to the nations, the 70 nations, he's going to give them an inheritance. And when he divided mankind, that goes back to Genesis chapter 11, where he divided the people into their nation, their clans, their languages, their territory, and what have you. He fixed the borders of the people according to the number of the sons of God. B'nai Elohim. Verse 9, but the Lord's portion, notice there's a differentiation now. There's a differentiation. But the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob, his allotted heritage. And basically what Moses is trying to do is to remind the people coming up out of Egypt that had been in slavery there for so long. And they really didn't know that much about Yahweh, folks. They really didn't. They were slaves. Oh, they had some oral traditions and stuff like that. But as far as being able to worship and everything, they couldn't do that. And so here, Moses is trying to get the people to understand, folks, you are special. You are so special that you are Yahweh's allotted heritage. You're going to be his chosen people. And you need to learn how, not only to have a relationship with Yahweh, but to understand how Yahweh wants you to conduct yourselves in service to him and a representative of him to the other nations. All right, God's division of the nations was actually him just inheriting the 70 nations at Babel as his people and him being their exclusive God. He will raise up a new people. Okay, this is going to be the nation of Israel. Through a new covenant, he would own and love this new people as their exclusive God. All right, the 70 nations would have a lesser God governing them, ruling them, guiding them, sons of God. Okay? Yahweh says, I'm going to raise up this special people, this nation, and we're going to call it Israel. They're going to be my people. I'm going to govern them, and I am going to be their only God. They're not going to be other sons of God ruling this people. It's going to be me. And they're going to serve as an example for the other nations. Okay, the call of Abraham out of Mesopotamia, the very center of rebellion. Okay, Babylon, Assyria, what have you, Fertile Crescent, all that area. But in the future, even though God has just inherited these 70 nations, in the future, he will inherit them all. Okay? And that will bring us up even into the New Testament. Okay, I made this point, Deuteronomy 4, verse 20. Again, as the people were coming out of Egypt, you are the inheritance of Yahweh. You belong to him. And I'm going to show you how you are to conduct yourselves as his people, as his inheritance. I mean, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, what does this mean? What did the nations inherit? At Babel, the nations were divided, given their inheritance. They would be given a lesser God to rule over each nation. Now that, sometimes in our minds, these things don't gel real fast. The God, little g, he had already stated in Deuteronomy 32, look, I am going to assign a son of God, B'nai Elohim, over each nation. That God, little g, is going to be an administrator, a governor, a ruler, a prince, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to hold them responsible for that nation. I'm going to take Israel. Israel is going to be my people. The inheritance, I'm going to give somebody else over to rule you. And I'm going to spend the bulk of my time with my chosen people, Israel. Now that's a new concept. We haven't ever really discussed that. We've never really taught anything like that. And so the first reaction is, and that's fine. That's an honest reaction. But the more you get into Scripture, the more you begin to see how these things fall in place. And you sit there and you scratch your head, why didn't I see that before? Well, again, I pointed out, hey, 2, 3, 4 months, I'll be 80 years old, and I'm just now learning this stuff. I wish I'd have known this back when I was a young buck preaching. It would have changed the way I preached. I'd have probably got thrown out of the church. Yeah, I'd have been church disciplined probably, sure. Because we were so rigid in our thinking, in our understanding. Oh, we'd pride ourselves on the book, but we only wanted certain things that we agreed with, that we felt comfortable with. And this challenges our thinking. It really does. It challenges our thinking. It's out of the norm for us. Okay, the inheritance was to be a small g, a son of God that would rule over each nation according to the number of the sons of God. This was their inheritance and their judgment. God says, look, you rebelled against me in the garden. All right, we'll work through that. And a little while later on, you rascals, you rebelled again. And look how corrupt the earth became. Genesis chapter 6. And you really ticked me off. And I'm going to wipe the whole thing out. And we're going to start over except for Noah and his family. All right? That works out. Then guess what? As time goes by, Genesis chapter 11. And God says, enough's enough. If you people want to consistently rebel against me, it becomes a way of life for you. Every thought of your heart is evil continually, then I'm going to let you suffer the consequences. I'm going to pass judgment on you. And again, I alluded to Romans chapter 1 last week. Romans chapter 1, verse 24, 26, 28. God gave them up. Patience runs out. God has tremendous amount of patience. But when enough is enough in the mind of God, folks, it's over. It's over. And that is what is happening here. The responsibility of the sons of God to the nations were to govern and guide each nation wisely. Now we know there was at least 70 because there's 70 nations. Those 70 sons of God, one appointed to each of the nations, God's going to hold accountable. I've often wondered, why in the world did God create myriads and myriads and myriads and myriads, legions upon legions upon legions of angels, celestial beings, Elohim? Why did he create all those beings? Because everyone is going in some way to fulfill a purpose for the glory of God. That was his intent. But because of free will, some chose to go their own way rather than Yahweh's way. They will remind the nations of Yahweh's sovereignty and power. I mean, they had an intimate relationship, brothers, with Yahweh. Yahweh created them. He called them his sons. I could just see the intimate relationship there. And they knew about Yahweh's sovereignty. They knew about Yahweh's love. Who better to share with the nations what Yahweh's like than have someone that's dwelled in Yahweh's presence? Think about that. Encourage the nations to seek after Yahweh. I'm going to give you a tough assignment. I'm going to let you be in charge of this nation or this nation or this nation over here. And right now they're kind of got a rebellious attitude, You need to work with them and bring them around to get them to understand how wonderful I am and how I would bless their lives. Declare that Yahweh would bring the nations back into his family. You know, I don't know when those nations were created and a son of God was assigned to each nation. I don't know how that son of God, little g, interacted with humans. We know throughout Scripture that angels or what have you, celestial beings, have interacted with human beings. What all took place? Boy, I have no idea. I'd like to be on the fly on the wall and find out, you know, but I have no idea. But somehow, some way, these sons of God were in charge of these individual nations, and they were to guide and direct and oversee, superintend, be a leader, pick your synonym there, to bring those nations back to God. And ultimately, to proclaim and demonstrate justice and righteousness. And that, to me, is a profound theme because it tells you of the character of God. It tells you who God is. A God of justice and a God of righteousness. My sons of God, you are imagers of me. Go and be that image to this nation. They, in turn, as humans, are supposed to be imagers of me, but they've lost their way. And you need to remind them of me and of justice and of righteousness. Would the sons of God be loyal and faithful to Yahweh and to the nations? Psalm 82, 1 through 8. Read along with me. God, Elohim, has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, little g, that's scripture, little g, there are little gods, okay? In the midst of the gods, Elohim, he holds judgment. Here's the charge. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Now, do you see what's going on? We'll have a little explanation a little later on. But see what is going on. God is holding court. This is for you lawyers, okay? You attorneys. Yahweh's holding court. And he's about to make an accusation, a charge. He's going to be the prosecuting attorney in this case. And he says, here's the charge. How long will you, sons of God, Elohim, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? The wicked are who? The wicked in each individual nation. You get the impression that they are neglecting, overlooking, or maybe in some cases participating in the advancement of wickedness in each of the nations. Now just mull that over for all. Just let it, what do we do? Let it marinate. There we go. That's a good word. Let it marinate a while in your mind. Another thought, verse 3, give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Verse 4, rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. I put you in charge of a nation. You are to bring that nation back to me. You are to be my imager. And what I'm finding out is you haven't been loyal. You haven't been faithful. Matter of fact, it looks like to me you've aided and abetted the wicked at the expense of the poor and the downtrodden and the abused. Now see, this is what impresses me. And I don't mean to embarrass you guys, but Rob, you, Chris, Larry, those of you that have eternal law backgrounds, you are the fine line in many cases from protecting the weak, the poor, the downtrodden, the abused from those that would be wicked. You're the line of defense. And you have a powerful impact on society when you uphold justice and righteousness. That's the reason I find relief in Chris and Rob and all of you attorneys, because I know you're brothers in the Lord and you will uphold Yahweh's justice and righteousness. And that makes for a better society. And it punishes, obviously, the wicked. Enough on sermon, okay? They have neither knowledge or understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. That simply means, hey, there's chaos everywhere. When the wicked reign, there's chaos. When the wicked reign in any society, there's chaos. And it's got to be stopped. I said, now I want you to listen to this quote. I said, this is the Most High. I said, you are what? What? A figment of my imagination? No. He said to his sons that he appointed to head the nations, you are gods. You're Elohim. You're sons of God, B'nai Halim. You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. At least all 70 that he's talking about. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince, like any leader. Daniel chapter 10 examples, okay? Arise, O God, Elohim, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. Now, Psalm 82 is a psalm that you really need to sit down in the quietness in your home, pray, and then read and marinate. Marinate. Think about it. When I first was exposed to that, I had so many questions that made Dan's head spin. But that's the text. That's the text. There is so much, brothers and sisters, going on in that other realm. There's so much going on in this earthly realm. And there is so much interaction that we're not even aware of. It would scare us to death. Yahweh. Arise, O Yahweh, or God, Elohim, judge the earth, for you, God, shall inherit all the nations. Okay? Little side note. Boy, we're going to run out of time. Yeah, we're going to speed up. Encourage your children and your grandchildren to learn how to diagram sentences. That sounds stupid, baby. But if you can diagram a sentence, it places all these things in their proper perspective. When Dad worked for Phillips Petroleum in the seismograph, we went all over the United States and Canada, okay? And invariably, every school I went to, whether it was for 4 days or for 8 months, I always hit literature. That's why I love to read. But you know what? I could never, hardly ever diagram a sentence to understand everything in its proper perspective. And it brings such clarity. Enough of that. Got to move on. Got to move on. Okay. What?
So, with 6, verse 6, it's saying, verse 7 is, little God and men are alike, for they have passed away.
Well, what he's going to decree is that the sons of God that have been disloyal, they are going to lose their immortality. Well, we'll get to that. Okay, they may not. Okay, we'll get to that. All right. Remember, as imagers, created celestial beings and human beings, each has been given free will. Each has intelligence and the ability to choose. It's possible to choose wrongly. Both beings are fallible. Yahweh's aware of that. I mean, after all, he created all the divine beings. He's created humanity. He knows what weaknesses are, okay? Job 4, 17 and 18. Can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his Maker? Even his servants he puts no trust, and his angels he charges with error. Can angels make wrong choices and err? What does the text say? I mean, there's just so much here. It just blows my mind. Is man perfect, sinless? No. Yahweh knew that. He gave man the power of choice. He knew that there is the temptation to choose wrong. And that ushers in evil. Another verse. Job 15:15. Behold, God puts no trust in his holy ones, and the heavens are not pure in his sight. Do you see what that verse says? Yahweh even knows that his created spiritual beings with the power of free will, of choice, can choose wrong. Hang on. They can choose wrong. Yahweh's aware of that. And because he's all-knowing and all-powerful, he can work all that ultimately to his own glory. But there are consequences when wrong is chosen. Eventually, the sons of God, charged with the task of ruling the nations, turned adversarial, seducing the nations into idolatry. Wickedness and the abuse of the people became the norm. Psalm 82, 1 through 5, we've already read that. Okay? Yahweh's decree, like men, sons of the Most High, who he's addressing, you shall die. You will lose your present status of immortality. Now, I have long thought in my mind that angels were eternal, but they're not. God created them. God created them. They are a created being. That's when their existence started, not way back there. And what Yahweh is saying is, because of your disloyalty to me, I'm going to treat you just like humanity. You are going to lose your immortality. You are going to die like humans die. 3 minutes? Okay. We may not make it. Again, that's something you kind of need to marinate for a little while. Yahweh's judgment. On that day, the Lord will punish the host of heaven. There's your celestial beings. There's your sons of God. There's any other Elohim that are disloyal to Yahweh. A day is coming. Now, some of them are already in prison. Jude, Peter, remember? In chains of darkness. On that day, the Lord will punish the host of heaven and the kings of the earth. I'm going to get you both. I'm going to get the celestial beings, and I'm going to get the earthly beings because of their wickedness, their disloyalty to me, their corruption. They will be gathered together as prisoners in the pit, the abyss, Tartarus. They will be shut up in a prison. I again referred you to Jude, to Peter. And after many days, they will be punished. Satan, all the disloyal Elohim, fallen angels, whatever you want to call them, they're going to be punished. Judgment, exactly. Exactly. Justice and righteousness will prevail. Period. Got to move on. Observations. Psalm 82 depicts the trial between the gods of the nations in which these gods are condemned to die like humanity. They will lose their immortality. Yahweh, as the supreme, unique, and only creator God, is the only Elohim with the power to destroy all other little g gods, his sons. Particularly those that were unfaithful. Now think about that. Here we thought everything was so peaceful in the other realm. There's warfare everywhere. Because of the power of choice. The gods of the nations have been negligent in their legal duties and have allowed corruption to reign in their individual nations or realms. Yahweh holds judgment. He admonishes the gods for their exploitation and abuse of their poor, the oppressed, and the downtrodden in their respective nations or realms. Gross malfeasance. Is that a good lawyer term, Larry? Gross malfeasance? That sounds bad, doesn't it? The verdict. A gross failure of the gods, the sons of gods, to carry out their duties as custodians of justice and righteousness in the nations. Very hurriedly. I got less than a minute. I don't even have that anymore. Bear with me. I got one or two more slides and we'll be done. Yahweh, sacred space, and holiness, distinction. Yahweh the Most High is superior to all Elohim, including the lesser gods, the sons of God. Deuteronomy 10:17, for the Lord your God, Yahweh your Elohim, is Elohim of Elohim. Sounds confusing, same word. But one has reference to God, Yahweh, the other to the lesser gods. So, for the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God. Israel, its people and land, as Yahweh's inheritance, was holy ground. The territory and the people of other nations would now belong to other gods, Elohim, because of Yahweh's decree, Deuteronomy 32:8 and 9. The prophet Elisha, the commander Naaman, and the dirt, holy ground. Now Dan mentioned this in one of his sermons a while back. A year or so ago, we were discovering all this stuff. You know, Naaman has leprosy. He is a very good commander, very high ranking, very close to the king of Syria, and he's got leprosy. And in one of his conquests, he brings home a young Israelite girl. And somewhere over a period of time, the girl convinces Naaman's wife that she needs to tell Naaman he needs to go to see the prophet in Israel. Well, after a period of time, Naaman goes. He goes to the house of Elisha. Elisha sends out a messenger. Go and dip in the River Jordan 7 times. And this made Naaman furious. You didn't even give me the common courtesy of coming out of the door and speaking to me, waving your arms, saying something to get me healed. And he trots back. He's fed up. Well, a little time passes and it gels for a little while, and finally Naaman is persuaded to go back. And he dips in the Jordan 7 times, and he's cured of his leprosy. And he makes a statement. He offers Elisha all this silver and this gold and 10 changes of clothing. And Elisha refuses it. He says, well, if you won't take all this stuff, can I have a request from you? I would like to have 2 donkeys loaded with dirt. Dirt. Why in the world would a commander of one of the most powerful armies in the world ask another man, can I have dirt out of your yard? But because Naaman was healed, not by the God of Syria, but by the God of Israel, he considered that ground holy. The true and living God resides in Israel. This is holy ground. And I want to take it back to Syria. Now, what does he do with that ground? I don't know if he builds an altar, spreads the dirt around in a room in his house or out in the backyard. I don't know how he functioned in worshiping Yahweh. But he was convinced in his mind that that dirt in that nation with that powerful God was holy ground. And we could project that into some New Testament teaching. I'm going to just leave this up here, and you can watch it on the YouTube channel. This holy God, holy ground, holy nation. The stage is set for another phase of spiritual warfare between Yahweh and the disloyal gods, his divine rivals. And this time it would involve the nation of Israel against the nations Yahweh had disowned, disinherited, had cast off. It would truly be a holy war. And boy, there's a whole new realm to go through in the conquering of what we call the Israelite nation. I hope it challenges your thinking. I hope it piques your interest. I hope you will continue to study. My prayer is that it will make clarity, make sense to you. Because brothers and sisters, this stuff is exciting. It really is exciting. God bless you. Have a good day.